Hello, Mrs. Carney's class. I'm going to briefly explain to you what paradox is and tell you the difference between paradox and irony, because they are easily confused. A paradox, as defined by Webster's Dictionary, is a statement that is seemingly contradictory or opposed to common sense and yet is perhaps true. So basically, a paradox is a contradiction that happens to be true. Paradox is found a lot throughout literature. Here are some popular examples. In Chapter 1 of 1984 by George Orwell, a well-known paradox is war is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Another example is from Alice in Wonderland in the chapter titled A Mad Tea Party. Take some more tea, the March Hare said to Alice very earnestly. I've had nothing yet, Alice replied in an offended tone, so I can't take more. You mean you can't take less, said the Hatter. It's very easy to take more than nothing. Nobody asked your opinion, said Alice. Who's making personal remarks now? The Hatter said triumphantly. The paradox in both of these examples is that the statements made defy our reasoning, but in some sense they also hold a common truth. A simpler example of a paradox is a statement, standing is more tiring than walking. It would make more sense for walking to be more tiring, but in reality you get more tired standing than you do walking. My last example of paradox is in a stanza from the poem I recited during our newscast. It says, money can buy a clock, but not time. This is an evident truth, which is a contradiction, because you can buy a clock, which tells time, but you cannot buy time itself. Now, for the second part of our lesson, I'll be discussing the difference between irony and paradox. A problem we ran into when choosing ideas for our newscast was a lot of the ideas we thought were paradoxes were really ironies, because many paradoxes can be seen in some instances as ironic. One example of this problem was when we came up with the story of the marriage between the tallest man in the world and the shortest woman in the world. We thought this was a paradox because short and tall are opposites, so therefore they are contradictory. But we realized this story would represent irony when we looked at it in its context. The story represented irony because the opposite of what you expected happened. This brings me to the definition of irony. Irony is the contrast between what is stated explicitly and what is really meant, or the difference between what happens to be and what is actually true. Irony and paradox can easily be confused because they both involve opposing components. To differentiate between paradox and irony, just remember that a paradox are things that seem like they don't go together, but they do, and irony is when a thing is said, but another thing is meant. For your assessment, we want you to pick out the paradoxes in our video and one irony and tell us the difference between the two. Don't forget to watch the video to complete the assessment, and we hope you enjoy our lesson.